Well, good Thursday evening, everyone. Welcome to Bowling with the Fef, a platform to share your unique bowling story, answer questions, ask questions, discuss things about bowling and the like. All live here on the YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us tonight. Again, to be the first to know when we start our live streams, post videos, things like that, be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell. You'll be the first to know. We also have a Facebook group. If you're interested in joining that Facebook group, hit me up. Lots of bowling content there. Conversations about bowling and when we're going to be posting videos and things like that. So it's a good if I don't say so myself. I'm a little biased on that front, but what can I say? I run the page, so I think you should join. Feel free to comment, ask questions on that page as well as on the stream. We will try and get to them by the end of this episode. And if you're a replay viewer, feel free to join the conversation. Throw up a comment in the chat, and I will do my best to respond or get you an answer to a question if you have one. Let's head off to our first frame, and this is the first season, the first bowling season that the United States Bowling Congress has required its bowlers to have bowling balls that don't have balance holes in them. And a balance hole is either a fourth or a third hole that a ball driller will drill into the bowling ball. It's used to manipulate how that ball reacts or rolls. I actually have a prop this time. I brought one of mine upstairs. This one has 3 holes, so fingers and a thumb. It doesn't have a balance hole in it, so it would be suitable for competition this year. But some folks have that 4th hole in. If they bowl with 2 hands, no thumb hole. There's no thumb hole here. That 3rd hole could be a balance hole, which, again, isn't allowed this year for the first time in USBC history. The USBC studied the issue. They found that having one of those balance holes in it can greatly influence what's called the differential RG, or radius of gyration, and make the ball even stronger than the manufacturers intended. So they wanted to get rid of that stuff. And starting in August, they required all bowlers to have those holes plugged up when they have new bowling balls, not to drill them in those bowling balls in the first place. And what we're wondering is what you think of that rule, what you think of this new balance hole rule from the United States Bowling Congress. Have you had to plug up a balance hole in one of your bowling balls? Have you had to go with an alternate drilling? Let us know in the chat or in the comments if you're a replay viewer, and we will talk about that in the foundation frame a little later in our show. For now, let's get to the beer frame. We are talking with Mike Spike. Oops. There we go. Mike Spike Holzhueter. Did I get that right?
You did. You pronounced Spike very well.
It's easy to call you Spike. I like that better than trying to pronounce your last name. But thankfully, we were able to connect over the course of the week. We talked pronunciation of last names, and at least I'm close, I guess. How are you doing tonight, Mike?
I'm doing great. Thanks much.
Yeah, great to have you on the show. Now, Mike runs Spike's Pro Shop at Broadway Bowl in Menominee, Wisconsin. And I've got their Facebook page up here in my other window right there, Spike's Pro Shop. And I was just talking with Spike off air here, and I found it interesting that, sure enough, he's got something right here. That league season was approaching. As of August 1st, balance holes have to be plugged in order for the bowling ball to be used in certified competition. What do you think about that rule? Have you had to, I guess, alter a bunch of bowling balls because of that, or change how you drill or anything like that?
Well, first off, it's been a busy fall, busier than normal, at least with my pro shop. Many people bringing their bowling balls in that needed a weight hole plugged right around the time when league would start. Now, one thing that altered that, of course, was the pandemic and the delay of many bowling leagues. And in Menominee, where I do bowl league on Tuesday nights, and also, of course, that's where the pro shop is located, things got started a little bit later this year. Most leagues began around the first part of October, so it did allow for a little extra time, I think, but still quite a few balls to plug. It does impact the motion, and of course it's all dependent on a number of factors, but one of those factors is where the balance hole is located on the ball itself. And in most cases, it's probably going to have a minimal impact on overall motion and amount of hook. And again, that's dependent on the placement of the balance hole, but most of the new reactive bowling balls are made for moderate to, I'll say maximum, but a good amount of track flare. So plugging that balance hole is going to change where that PSA location is on the bowling ball, and can alter the track flare, maybe take some of the track flare away while the ball is rolling and proceeds to the pins. But again, it depends on the layout, the geometry of the core. But for the most case, it's not going to impact the ball all that much. But a bowler may see a small impact of overall hook.
Sure. And when we talk about track flare, we're talking about the parts of the ball that come in contact with the lane, which can differ with each revolution. Sometimes those parts get farther down the ball than others.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a high rev player will see a large number of lines in their ball. Somebody who doesn't rev the ball, such as me, may not see quite as many of those oil rings on the bowling ball, but that is track flare. You can the amount of track flare is the distance between each oil ring when you look at that. And typically it's going to be on, if you're a right-handed bowler, it's going to be on the left side of the fingers and the thumb.
Sure. Tell me about the origins of the shop. When did you start this up, and why is it where it is?
Well, the origins of the pro shop go back to a gentleman named Dan Schwartz, and a few of the older Eau Claire bowlers would be familiar with Dan. Dan's passed away. He did pass away in 2008, but I hooked up with Dan when I was just starting into bowling. I was probably around 16 or 17 years old. But he had a pretty big impact on bowling around the Menominee area. And again, people in Eau Claire as well. In fact, one of those people, Jerry Holdorf, who has Scoremore Pro Shop,
at
worked
Wagner's.
with Dan quite a bit. Yeah, at Wagner's. So he worked with Dan quite a bit back in the early days, probably mid 80s to late 80s. Another gentleman, Brian Berg, who is a bowler that grew up in Menominee, has since moved away, but he was on the PBA tour back in the late 80s, early 90s, and then eventually worked for Storm. Was one of their main bowling ball developers, I guess, at the time. So Dan worked with Brian too. So I heard stories of Dan working with Brian when Brian was early in his career. They'd be past midnight at Menominee Lanes back in the day. So this would have been probably late 80s. But just working on ball layouts and releases, and I don't know, Andrew, if you were familiar with Brian at all, but if you YouTube him, there is a TV match. He was bowling Mike Shady, and you can really see how Brian rolls the ball off of his hand and his wrist, and he cupped his wrist so much. And so he was a lot of fun to watch. But it goes, the pro shop origin goes back to those days. So not to drag this out too much, over the years I worked with Dan. I became somewhat competitive myself in a bowling sense, and Dan had at the time owned, or he purchased Viking Bowl in Colfax, and I started bowling some tournaments. So we worked on some layouts. Dan sold the bowling alley, ended up with the pro shop in Broadway Bowl. I think at the time it was called Gusto's Gridiron Bowl. So there's a trivia question for some people, but working with Dan on some layouts and trying to improve my game, so to speak. Dan was sick at the time. We knew that. So in the summer of 2008, he approached me and said, "Hey, Spike, I think it'd be a great opportunity for you to take over the pro shop. I know you've got a lot going on in your life. I was young kids at the time, and working full time as well. He says, I think you could manage it, and I'd really like you to see you keep it going. So I thought Dan would be around maybe a year or two yet, but he became less mobile that fall. And I guess I didn't realize how sick he was, but then his mind failed, and it wasn't long after that he passed on. So sure. Dan had a pretty big impact on me. He was a psych major, so he always had some cool insight on the customers and the approach to bowling. But so that's the origin of the pro shop. I became fairly busy. So that was 2008, 2010, 11, 12 were probably my busiest years in the pro shop, and I spent the most time in there during those years.
Okay. Is it a deal where, where you kind of return to that when you're drilling bowling balls, when you're working in that pro shop, you think of Dan's influence, or kind of a what would Dan do in tricky situations or things like that?
I do pull back to some of the experiences with Dan and just think about, just as you said, what would Dan do right now? I mean, he has such a dry sense of humor, and I try to pull back on that once in a while. And it was funny, maybe 4 years ago. So I was actually rearranging some things on the floor on a lower rack of a shelf, and had the door open. It was up Thursday evening, and guy walks in and says, "Hey, I need you to drill one of those storm bowling balls." And I stood up, and it was Brian Bird, who appeared in town. And Brian didn't remember me that well, but he knew Dan, and he looked at the drill press and he says, "That's the press I learned on."
Oh, wow.
It was kind of a neat experience. So we chatted for a while, and it was cool to see Brian.
Yeah. How has running a pro shop or even your pro shop changed over the years? And I'm not really talking about this year in particular with COVID and with this new rule change, but there have been lots of shifts in the game, in equipment. How does that affect a pro shop operator?
Well, doing what I can to stay on top of the technology. Just before I took over the pro shop, the USBC changed the rule with the differential, so they maximized it. I think they changed the spec to 0.060 for the RG diff, and that impacted the bowling ball development in itself. But then understanding the cover stocks and understanding how a person's grip can impact their release. So while I don't spend a lot of time now going to seminars, I've probably spent more time in the pro shop changing my own release, which has really helped me understand how I can help my clients when they come in and they're having release issues, or maybe they're tracking over a thumb, and so understanding layouts and then their grip itself, and making it comfortable. First of all, if the ball's not coming off your hand well, if it's not comfortable, that's really going to impact your release and the roll of the ball, because that's key. Getting the ball onto the lane, letting it do its work, and getting it rolling when it's getting into the pins.
Yeah. And when you start getting into the competitive ranks, you see really good players maybe in your hometown, or if you have the privilege to watch professionals do this, it's all about repetition, and that release is such a big part of that. To your point, it's always amazed me to see how the professionals release the ball and how consistently and just how it comes off their hand. It's really an interesting thing. To balance running a pro shop with the rest of your life, is it a part-time job? Do you have a day job? Is this something that consumes as much of your life as a full-time job would?
The pro shop it's more of a hobby or a side business. And I do work full time. I work in St. Paul and put in at least 40 hours a week, plus the drive to and from work 5 days a week. So my time in the pro shop is minimized because of that. But I do have I do have some good help. A gentleman named Paul Melans, who actually does quite a bit of bowling himself. Not so much now because of the pandemic, but Paul's stayed active. He's in his upper 60s right now, and he still bowls PBA senior regional and national events when he gets the chance. And Paul probably hasn't had a prolific career on the senior tour, but he has cashed multiple times and developed some great relationships. And Paul can still get the ball down the lane pretty well. So he's been a great help in the pro shop. He enjoys being there. Of course, he's retired from his career, and it allows him the time to be in there. And of course, he tinkers and drills bowling balls and plugs and redrills and tries to learn on his own as well. So I can't say enough about having him in there to help me out.
Sure. Is it a deal where you have, you said that you were approached and, hey, why don't you come take over the shop? Is this something where you knew how to drill a bowling ball at that point? Was it something you had to learn, and did it take a lot of time and effort to learn?
It took some time and effort. It's learning how to repeat a drilling. So say you bring your bowling ball to me and you say, hey, match this layout. This ball is so comfortable. So learning how to replicate that's really a big key. And Dan was a stickler on that. And I think he gave me, he got me started in the right direction in respect to that. So understanding the technology and staying on top of the bowling ball technology, understanding the physics behind it. I mean, it is a science. There's engineering that goes into this, and it's another key is understanding and knowing where your customer's PAP is. So that first place, when that ball makes its first revolution, and knowing where that positive access point on the bowling ball is really a key to being successful and making your customers happy. Because if you don't know that, you're just throwing darts, really.
Yeah, sure. You said a little bit about the beginning of your bowling story, that you had started when you were about 16 or 17, which is a little bit later than some of my previous guests. But tell me how you got into it, and what led you to become, start as a beginner and become, more competitive.
Sure. Yeah, I got into league. I think I was 16. I just started driving, in fact. Because some of my friends bowled and I really enjoyed it. And I was not good. Tall and skinny and a little uncoordinated to go with it. So it took me a while to develop a game. And my first urethane ball was, I think it was an orange ebonite Gyro 1.
Oh, yeah.
And, I believe both Jerry and Brian Berg co-drilled that ball, so to speak. And I know they were going back and forth on handspan and what I should do. And I learned how to bowl on the one board. You threw urethane right up one, and that's where you got your best reaction and your best hook. And as my average started going up, 150, 160, 170, 180s, the first couple of years when I developed that style, so to speak, there was some painful nights. I'd be on a double and then maybe a double gutter. But I think learning how to play the lanes way outside like that really developed my game. And when I go to nationals now, it does not bother me to throw at 2 board or 3 board, and to play that line straight up the alley from the foul line is difficult. Not many people can do it, but it really did help me. But developed from there. I became competitive. I don't compete to the level. I watched Dave's live stream last week, and very interesting to listen to him and his stories and experiences. But him or Andy Mills or some of those guys the guys that bowl on tour and do it regularly and do it very well. I'm not at that level, but I have my moments. I've made cuts in some scratch match games, and I've won some tournaments here and there. But again, I consider myself probably more tier 2, but I do think that I know quite a bit about the game and I really enjoy passing that on.
Yeah.
I do remember one tournament I was contemplating. Bowling was the back in the day they had the all-star match game in lacrosse. So this is before Nick's tournament at Playmore. This was at all-star lanes. Again, it was a 16 lane house,
Mm-hmm.
similar to Playmore. Big tournament. They had 3 shifts qualifying on Saturday, and then finals were on Sunday. And I wasn't feeling well, so I called and confirmed that I was going to make the drive, and I got stuck behind a couple of combines on the way there.
That's a peach of a drive, isn't it?
Oh yes, yeah. So closing in on 1 o'clock, and All Star was notorious for running behind. So I felt pretty good that if I got there at 1, I was going to be in time for practice. And I called the center, and they said, "Oh, you got time, plenty of time." As I'm carrying my balls into the front door, I could hear pins falling. I thought, well, they must be finishing the 8th game of qualifying for the previous shift. No, they were just finishing practice.
No.
So I quick signed in, and I get to the lane, and I'm bowling with Tom Hess and Don Breeden. So a couple big names out of Iowa.
Yeah.
And I barely knew Don, but I really didn't know Tom, other than I knew he was a pretty good bowler. Yeah. But that was quite the deal. I went 269, 230 out of the chute, and then kind of tailed off from there, and I just missed the cut. But bowling with those 2 guys was something else. Tom had a 299 game, and then I did get to talk to Don a little bit, and he remembered bowling the Red Cedar match games years ago, and he asked about. I'm kind of going a little off track here, but
that's okay.
You still hang around the Fatty P? The Fatty P. So the Fatty P was a guy that hung around the bowling alley all the time, and he helped out with the tournament, ran the pot games, and he was just a character. But he was almost like Rodney Dangerfield,
Sure.
That kind of a character. But a lot of fun bowling back then. Again, somewhat competitive, but now I still enjoy it. I've kind of backed down a little bit. I do some 9 pins, and some maybe once or twice I'll do a scratch tournament throughout the year, but not to the level that I once did.
Sure. You talked about basically putting it right up the gutter on the 1 board, and that is kind of a sentimental spot for me because I have mentioned that I was a college bowler and I bowled at UW Milwaukee my last 2 years. We kind of took over the Union House. We didn't know much about oiling lanes, and they just let open bowlers just bowl. And after a while, synthetic lanes kind of go bad, I guess you could say, from a lot of use and not a lot of maintenance. And when we'd oil the lanes, we found that really the only place to get any semblance of some area to hit was right along the gutter. So we had to do the same thing. We had to adapt to that, learn how to play straight up 2 or straight up 1. Do you think that's kind of a lost art in today's game?
It is. And with the modern game, especially on the right-handed side of the lane, you go to a tournament and the bowlers are starting second arrow because that's their comfort zone. That's where they bowl in league. And much of the friction is going to be outside of 10 board, maybe outside of 8 board when they bowl league. Mm-hmm. And it's a sore spot with me, really. I don't like the house pattern. I like a little bit more of a challenge. It's tough for a lot of bowlers to understand that when you're bowling, say at nationals, it's nothing like it is in a league. Or if you go to a more difficult scratch tournament, if they put out a challenging shot, it's going to really it can level the field. The good bowlers will still rise to the top, but it's a different game. It really is. So what you did in college really probably helped you when it came to your overall bowling and making you a better bowler. It does make you more accurate. To me, it's more fun. Yeah, your scores aren't what they are on a house shot, but you have to work. That's what bowling should be. If you miss right, I think the ball should miss the head pin to the right, and vice versa. If you miss left, should miss the pocket left.
Yeah. but it's not always that way, unfortunately, in today's game. And I think it takes a certain kind of person, a certain kind of bowler to accept, hey, that's that's a house pattern, and this is a more challenging shot, and there's a place in the game for both. And on a challenging shot, yeah, I might be lucky to average 180 when I average 210 on the typical house pattern.
Yes, that's exactly correct. So you had bowled in the Monday Night League at Wagner's a few years ago, right?
I did, and I know where you're going with this. I actually left town right before they turned it into a sport condition, and it was really irritating because I would love to have bowled on that sport condition, but it just didn't work out.
Sure. One year I came in, and after 2 weeks I was averaging, I think, 150, and it was a frustrating start. Yeah. And it's tough on a person's ego, but yet you learn from it. It makes you better, and you just keep moving forward. But on a house shot, you can make mistakes, and you don't know that. Mm-hmm. So that's what I appreciate about a more challenging pattern. But it is what it is. I mean, I'll still bowl on a house pattern. I still enjoy it, and try to make it competitive, and it's still fun. I enjoy the game.
Absolutely. So now we're in this different time with COVID in the backdrop. You said you do bowl league at Broadway. What's it like bowling in this pandemic?
Well, the league that I'm in is we ended up with 11 teams, and there's 20 lanes. So we made the decision there's going to be a bye team, and they'll take that week off, and then we skip a pair. So it's a three-man league, so 3 men or 3 people on a team to begin with. So we're able to skip a pair, and we're able to spread out. And I do actually wear a mask once in a while. I keep it around my neck, and not too tight. I mean, I have choking issues when I bowl the way it is, but so I try to keep it loose enough. But try to respect that. I mean, the last thing that we want to do is get bowlers sick from this, and it's showing that it's a pretty contagious deal. So want to make sure that everybody's healthy and keep the bowling alley open as long as we can, because it would take one person getting sick, and it's probably going to shut down, and maybe be for a short time, but we don't know that.
Sure. And yeah, that's obviously the biggest thing is health and safety. But again, when you're kind of in the moment and you've got the mask on, I've got my mask right here. I've got this weird paperclip thing that's served me well since April. And I put my mask on, and I'm guessing the same thing happens to you that happens to me. Your glasses fog up. Does that affect your bowling at all?
Well, when I bowl, I'll typically pull the mask down.
Okay.
So I haven't had the issue while bowling, but I have to wear it at work. So yeah, there's times it fogs up, but I think I've just kind of gotten used to it and deal with it now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, like everybody else.
Yeah. Is that one league per week the extent of the bowling you do on a regular basis right now, or is there practice? Are there tournaments? Are there other leagues?
I've bowled 3 nights so far this year. So in the past, I bowled additional leagues. This is the first year, and sometime I bowled just 1 night a week. But I think I'll have the opportunity to sub here and there. But so far, just haven't bowled that much. And our team, we have 4 bowlers on a team, so we kind of do rotation and try to get everybody a chance to bowl. So I'll sit out every once in a while, and I don't know. It's fine. I'm not eager to go into public as much as pre-pandemic. Just for the reason with my job, I want to. I guess I want to minimize the risk of bringing anything into the workplace as well, or
Sure.
any people that I know. So I'm fine with it this year.
Yeah, and everybody has their comfort zone. Different people do it different ways, and that's kind of how it's going to be at this point. Now, along with the bowling, the pro shop, your day job, you also organize tournaments, or at least you have historically. There's Spike's Holiday Sweeper, which I took part in and was humbled in this past year. Tell me about that tournament, and is it going to happen this holiday season?
Well, yeah. So the tournament itself, I'd have to think back. It's been going at least 8 years, maybe 10. I'm guessing it's been about 10 years now. So
Okay.
The first time we ran this, it was probably a week and a half before the Christmas holiday, and we're thinking, we should just do a quick tournament over the holidays. Do that Friday night. So I talked to the manager at the bowling alley at Broadway Bowl. Yeah, let's do a tournament. So put something on Facebook and texted a few people, and so we're going to try to start at 7 p.m. I looked up as I'm signing people, and there's a line out the door, out the double doors at Broadway Bowl. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Where's all these people coming from? We ended up with 45 people bowling that night.
Wow.
So that was pretty neat. And we just kept it going. And last year, I think we had 52 or maybe 55, somewhere in there. A large amount of bowlers. And I think we had a lane issue last year during the tournament, so we had to move people around before we even got started. And a couple people swore at me, which I'm used to that, so no big deal. But it was all good. I mean, that's a fun tournament. I enjoy running that. It is handicapped, but it does tend to favor some of the better bowlers as well. So we've had some interesting matchups in the step ladders with some handicap and scratch bowlers, and it's just a good time. It really is. We do some things to make it fun, and I enjoy running that tournament, seeing the people every year.
Yeah, I distinctly remember getting ready to bowl last year and walking in the place and seeing just the concourse just filled with bowlers and bowling bags, and it was great to see people from the Twin Cities coming out to bowl this tournament in Menominee. That was obviously a great time. I mean, you don't have to win the whole thing to have a great time. Obviously, you want to, but
it helps.
Yeah, but a fun event, very competitive. Is it going to happen this year?
So good question. I've had some discussion with the management team at Broadway Bowl, and I think it's still up in the air, but we're kind of getting to crunch time, so we have to make a decision.
Sure.
I've got a few ideas on how we can maybe incorporate some qualifying to accommodate a fair amount of bowlers, but it would have to go over the course of more than one shift. But there's ways to do that. So we'll have to look at it and see what works. And then too, the timing this year with I think the way that the holidays fall, it's a good Friday night tournament, but I think Christmas Eve, I believe, is on a Friday this year. So on those years, we have to go to one side or the other of the holidays. And I would say there's a good chance if we do it, it would be probably the weekend before Christmas Eve.
Okay.
But again, all preliminary, but trying to put together a plan and get something out shortly on that.
Sure. And you typically, like you said, you publicized the first one on Facebook. Last year was well publicized on Facebook. That's typically something that you have on the Bowling Center page, on the Pro Shop page, both?
Both. The bowling alley helps get the word out, and then Facebook's just a really good platform to do things like that. And got a number of my friends are bowlers, and so it's good to see the turnout last year. And again, Facebook, it's a heck of a lot easier than printing flyers and driving around all the different centers, which got to be some long nights sometimes. But Facebook certainly changed how we communicate.
Yeah, that's for sure. I can't talk about tournaments in the Menominee area without mentioning the Red Cedar Match Games, which also has a long history of fantastic competition at Broadway Bowl.
Yeah, it really does, and we've tried to keep that tournament going as best we can. A few years ago, we took it down to one shift, and we ended up with 69 bowlers in one shift, which was amazing.
Yeah.
And then I got out of it for a couple of years. We've tried to reinvigorate it, to have had really good sponsorship the last couple of years too. $600 in prize money, in addition to what comes out of just the tournament entries itself. So I think we had around 40, maybe 42 bowlers last year, and Andy Mills beat Brady Stearns in the championship match. We had some really good bowlers. We try to put out a little more challenging pattern. In fact, we've named the pattern affectionately after Dan Schwartz. His nickname was Disco, and if a lot of the Menominee bowlers remember the P. I brought the P up earlier, talking about Don Breeden, but the P nicknamed Dan Disco. So Dan Disco Schwartz. We developed a tournament pattern that provides enough oil on the outside part of the lanes. Hopefully, promotes people to play outside of the typical track area, which is my goal. And it's actually generated some interesting lines throughout the years of using this pattern for the tournament. But typically, you don't see many people jumping left to fourth arrow. Andy Mills proved that you can very effectively do that, but Andy's pretty good at that too. So,
oh yeah,
it was a fun match to watch last year when those two pretty damn good bowlers going against each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll see what happens this year. We found a good weekend with it. I'd like to keep it going, and it's a challenging thing. The Broadway Bowl staff does a wonderful job. They get some people that maybe don't have some of the experience that you would have at some other bowling centers. Like I know Pat at Wagner's and the group that they have there. It seems like you see the same people year after year, and same with some of the other centers that you go to and get in some tournaments. So really, it's trying to come up with a standard way of doing things. So even if we change some of the staff at Broadway Bowl, we can have some consistencies. And last year we had some challenges. I know there was sand on the approaches. Even it was a little frustrating, but we'll iron those things out. Again, the staff does a pretty good job at Broadway Bowl, so we'll work through that. And then of course with the pandemic, so many things up in the air with that.
Yeah. So is this tournament also kind of something that you're going to make a future decision on whether it's going to run this year, or at least in the form that we know and love?
Yeah, we've had some discussion, and that one, it might be a little bit easier if we just say we're going to limit it at X amount of entries, and still try to get a good field, and we can do that. But again, you hate to limit things, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to maximize your participation and hopefully let as many people participate and roll in it as you can get into it. But we'll see. It is up in the air right now.
Yeah. A lot of us, even those of us in bowling circles, will never have that experience of running a tournament. We may bowl plenty of tournaments, but we'll never be in that situation where we're hosting the thing, where we're organizing the tournament. How do you balance, competitiveness with fairness and turnout and the things that, all bowlers really want out of the tournaments that, let's face it, they're dumping money into, their travel, the whole deal, to compete in?
Well, one thing you have to do is understand that, and I'm a competitive bowler myself, so it helps me with a little insight just from myself. But understand that bowlers have a lot of really good ideas, and typically those ideas are just to benefit themselves. And I don't mean that as a slam by any means. It's human nature. I've been around dirt track racing, and it's funny the similarities with drivers and bowlers, and if something's not to their liking, they'll let you know. Mm-hmm. So and I've been there too. I've made suggestions to tournament directors myself. So I'm mindful of that because I do run tournaments, and I try to be very constructive if I have input. And a lot of the bowlers I've dealt with are awesome. I can't say enough. They're typically very constructive. It's probably 5-10% of the time that it can be a little bit rude. Maybe throw some words out that 18 plus type words, but it's all good in the long run. And typically they'll apologize, and you develop some unique relationships that way. That's for sure. But sure. It is a balance, and I like competition. That's why we don't just put out any oil pattern for the Red Cedar match games. We try to make something a little bit different, a little bit special. It still comes down to there's 10 pins and you got a ball and you're trying to knock those pins down. It's just how you create an angle to get the ball to the pins. And so that's a simplistic approach, but obviously we try to make it competitive and make the guys think a little bit, or make the bowlers think.
Sure. And I would think there must be more good than bad that comes out of the criticism. Otherwise, you wouldn't keep doing it, right?
I do enjoy it. Sometimes it can be a little frustrating, I will admit it. And, there's issues. And I had a veteran guy talk to me last year and kind of shakes his head as he walks away. And you gotta just let it roll off your sleeve, so to speak, and know that overall they're kind of trying to help. But when you're running a tournament, at least with me, I'm usually kind of thinking about 3 steps ahead and then maybe forgetting about what I really should be doing at the time. So when somebody's talking to me, it's really difficult to listen and take into what they're saying, because you're trying to complete a task at hand. So you have to separate that too, and make sure you do listen and do the best you can to take in input and hopefully give them some feedback, even if you don't agree with what they're trying to sell you.
Sure. Tell me if this is unfair, but take out your crystal ball. Tell me about the future of what you do in bowling in Menominee. Where do you think all this is going moving forward? And I know we've got COVID right now, and there's a lot of uncertainty in that, but can you provide any insight on kind of what the future looks like for you in bowling?
Well, my goal is to keep the pro shop operating as long as I can. And that's going to require a bowling alley to be where it is right now as well. Well, at least in the current location, if I keep the pro shop there. So it's really hard to say. I'm somewhat optimistic that, and I say this because bowling as a whole, you look at the league numbers, and especially in Menominee, they've dropped off considerably over the last probably 10 years. Maybe almost in half from what we were 10 years ago from a league bowler standpoint. So that's a little frustrating, but then it is encouraging because there are some local high school programs that are strong, collegiate program. While Stout has been cut back, they still have a program, and it's not a sport, it's a club, but they still have their group, and you see a lot of Stout bowlers or Stout students coming in and bowling and enjoying it. And it is funny. I get 5-10 just people that want to bowl for the fun of it come in and buy a bowling ball throughout the year. So that's very encouraging. So I am hopeful, I'm optimistic that Broadway Bowl will be around for quite some time. The pandemic, it's hard to tell where that's going to take things, but again, we can just keep our fingers crossed, right? And try and stay healthy, but try and get out and support the economy as best we can through all this.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're going bowling, grab a friend, call a friend, spread the good word. I think that's what it comes down to.
Don't spread the COVID.
Yeah, you got that right. All right, so let's head into the foundation frame, which is where I kind of go back up my list here and see if anybody has left me any comments, and I've got one, and that's about the countdown music. The sexy music is back, baby. I didn't hear it because I can't hear it through that through my headset here. But Utopian Baseball Universe is a great friend of mine named Joe Buchholz, who will hopefully be on this live stream at some point. He's got some great memories of bowling back in the 1980s, as I do. So looking forward to that on a future episode. As we go off the sheet here, you've watched a previous episode, at least one of them, so you know our tradition, and that is to challenge somebody, another bowler, to be on this program in hopes that that's happened. I think we're at about maybe 33% with that. I know I've had one who's agreed to be on, who had been challenged before, but a couple others who I'm still waiting on. So do you have anybody that you can issue a challenge to be on this live stream, and why?
Well, I'm somewhat nostalgic when it comes to bowling, and I've gotten to know a gentleman over the years that I highly respect and truly enjoy talking with and just hanging out with once in a while. But I would love to see George Blage on here.
Okay.
Eau Claire legend. He knows so many of the bowlers, even some of the younger guys. He's familiar with, just because George is really, I believe he's really stuck around the sport for quite some time, and he pays attention to things. But he's a wealth of knowledge and fun to talk to. He's got some stories. He could probably go on about Eau Claire bowling for 3 hours, but then he knows so much about Midwest bowling too.
And a heck of a competitor.
Yes, he is.
That guy can bowl. I was on a league that he was on the last couple of years on Wednesdays at Bullwinkle's. Oh boy, he can definitely do it. Spike, if people want to, I guess, contact you about information about bowling balls, bowling supplies, tournaments, bowling in general, where can they reach you?
Well, you can go on my Facebook page for Spike's Pro Shop, and contact information is on there. I do field a fair amount of Facebook messages through my page, so that's a good way. And I think my contact number, my Pro Shop number is on there, which is just my cell phone number, 715-556-2808. So that's the best way. Text messages or Facebook messages, great way to get a hold of me. And typically, we don't have set hours. I'm in the Pro Shop on Tuesday nights because that's when I bowl. Otherwise, it is by appointment. And I do set some things up when Paul's available as well, to meet with people and at least take in what they have for ideas. And sometimes Paul will let me do some of the drilling if it's somebody new, or if there's questions. But between the two of us, we get it done.
Sure. Great. Well, Spike, it's been a pleasure. Really enjoy the insight and the stories of bowling in this area and beyond. Best of luck with the Pro Shop and the tournaments if they do happen. Let me know. I'll be happy to give the folks on the Facebook page a little nudge in that direction if the Holiday Sweeper or the Red Cedar Match Games does go on as it has before.
All right. Well, I appreciate the time and letting me on here and talk. And again, I'm passionate about bowling. I really enjoy it, and it's great to see this platform and you taking on this role, Andrew. Yeah. It's really cool, I think.
No, absolutely. It's labor of love, as I've said before, and that's kind of the whole purpose, is to spread the good word about bowling and determination, drive, passion from the folks like you who get into it. So, but yeah, thanks again for coming on, and we'll see you on the lanes.
Awesome. Thanks. Talk to you soon.
You bet. And again, if you're interested in being on this program, there are plenty of opportunities. I have a calendar that's filling up, I guess, for the next couple months, or not even a couple months, into December. But there are, again, plenty of opportunities for bowlers of all skill sets. Reach out. You can apply at bit.ly/bowling with the Fef, or shoot me a note on our Facebook group, and we'll make sure and get you on the schedule to be on this live stream, Bowling with the Fef. I'm Andrew Pfeffer, and thanks again for joining us. Have a great week. We will be back on Wednesday, the 11th. November 11th, which is Veterans Day. We will have our next live stream. So hope to see you then.